Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. This is a podcast dedicated to helping accounting professionals have their own accounting, bookkeeping, and tax business. In fact, the premier accounting firm in their area. It's in this podcast that we regularly want to discuss various topics that are meant to help you as the business owner start and build your business, addressing issues ranging from marketing, selling, pricing, onboarding staff, onboarding clients, offering quality accounting services, and so much more. It's in this that we actually bring on the experts, the various people that can share with us the insights we need to run our businesses more confidently and competently. I'm your host, Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center, and for more than 20 years, I've been working with accounting professionals to help them accomplish their dreams in starting and building their businesses, offering quality services, and most importantly, building lasting relationships with their clients. Now, if this is what you would like, definitely subscribe to the podcast and listen to our other episodes. But today, I have a guest that I'm sure you're going to enjoy. This is Mike Capuzzi. Mike happens to be a publisher, author, and book publishing coach that has helped clients create exceptional marketing results since 1998. In 2019, he launched Bite-Sized Books, a publishing concept formula for creating short, helpful books known as Shooks. Shooks are ideal for business owners, entrepreneurs, and corporate leaders who are looking to increase their level of authority while also providing helpful information in bite-sized books. Now, Mike is an author of 15 books himself, including 2 Amazon #1 bestsellers, the 100-Page Book and The Magic of Short Books. If you've ever wanted to write a nonfiction book or weren't sure how to do it, you're going to love what Mike has to share with us today. So, Mike, welcome to the show.
Roger, thank you very much.
Yeah, this is going to be quite fun. You know, as a business influencer or a thought leader, one of the things that comes up regularly is, have you written a book? You should write a book. The book is the ticket to position yourself as an expert. So why a book? Why a shook?
Well, actually, there are 2 questions there. Let me address the first one, because most people are familiar with books, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, listen, Roger, I'm a marketing geek. I've been doing this for now 2+ decades. And in my studies, I have found businesses, entrepreneurs using books as a marketing media for over 100 years. So, there's a long history of books. If you look at ads from the 20s and the 30s, I'm talking the previous century, for our younger listeners, you will see ads for the most obscure things, but they will feature a free book offer. So there's been a long history, Roger, of a book first marketing strategy. So that's one thing. The other thing is books are seen as objects of value. So again, coming at it from a purely marketing and sales standpoint, most marketing and sales collateral, people will look brochures, business cards, YouTube videos, whatever it might be, right? They been there, done that. Oftentimes they end up in the recycle bin or somewhere on a hard drive and they're forgotten about. Books are different. Books are seen as objects of value. We're used to paying for books. I mean, there's still bookstores. There's still bookstores where I live. Obviously, there's Amazon. So there's a different mindset with the average person. They're used to paying for them. The author is seen in higher esteem. So there's a lot of good reasons why writing a book, publishing a book can be very, very beneficial to business owners, accountants in particular. To answer your second question, why a shook? Well, the reality, Roger, I don't know about you. I'm a voracious reader. I just got back from vacation. I read 4 books on vacation. They were all fiction, which I don't get to read normally. No nonfiction. But in the world of business, when I'm reading my business books these days, I find myself starting and stopping books way more than I did when I was younger. They're bloated, they're long. So the concept for a short, helpful book that can be read in about an hour for a consumer, for a prospect, for an intended reader, that's a nice promise. That's a nice, hey, read this in an hour, not 3 or 4 hours. For the person writing it, it's a heck of a lot quicker. It's a lot less painful. So a short book, a shook, a short, helpful book, there's a lot of value to it, and it's something that we've been doing for a number of years now, and it's something we'll talk about more.
One of the things that I've always remembered, and this is from my youth, is one, the power of a book. Mm-hmm. Ebooks didn't exist when I was younger, but right. The book even today for me is not just something tangible, But because it's tangible, I'm less inclined to throw it away. My library at home is quite extensive, and my wife laments over the fact that it's 2 books deep. It literally has books in front of books. I can't even see the behind the scene books. So in doing so, I don't know that I would refer to myself necessarily as you said, a voracious book reader, but I'm in a position where, having read as many books as I have, I do find that they are difficult to discard. If I give it away, I want it back. I miss it when I know that I have something out of my library that's missing. And I can't say the same for an ebook. If I email somebody something, it's not like, wow, they didn't get back or they didn't return my ebook, right? So definitely something to be said about a book, but the positioning, like you were alluding, for the last 100 or more years, when someone can say that they've written a book, it's as if they sat down and really tried to consolidate their wisdom into something in print to leave behind, to kind of educate and bless humanity. And there's something to be said to that. So I like what you're sharing about books. But my last point is this. My dad said once, it's the small books that have the gems. It's there that somebody has a very important point. They make it. It's concise, and I've always found that to be true. The small books are, not necessarily a pamphlet, but a little bit bigger.
Right.
That's where I found a great deal of good insight. So I've always appreciated the smaller books.
Yeah, and again, I have a large library. I'm looking at part of it right here, right now, and I've got some classic first edition business books from the 1920s, 1930s, Roger. And there's a number of them that are they are small books. They were written to be, quick reads on a and the real beauty of them is they're very focused, right? How many books have you read that are just like, it's an entire Bible on a topic, whereas maybe readers would appreciate it being more focused rather than marketing, for example. Maybe it's a book just on email marketing. So there's definitely value to shorter books. I will say 2 things. There are still reasons why a more traditional book is important and necessary. So I'm not poo-pooing that. The other thing, when we get back to ebooks, Roger, I always say it's very difficult to autograph an ebook. And when you are a book author and you're handing out your books at events or at a meeting, people will ask you to make it out to them, sign it. I mean, it happens all the time. So it's kind of hard to do that on a PDF.
So I read a study, and this really stood out to me. And you have to understand, I'm coming from the context of I'm a post-secondary school, I'm teaching individuals. And what I learned is when a book is for, let's say, entertainment purposes, like you were mentioning some fictional books, you're reading them at your leisure, those are fine, they were saying, to actually have as a digital copy that you can just go through, scroll, because you're merely enjoying the read. But any book that you're trying to retain information from, where you're perhaps more inclined to make notations, highlight, they actually said that the physical book is better for memory retention because your mind actually does placement associations. It's on this side of the page, it's in this corner, it's in this place, it was highlighted here. And it's amazing how the mind can kind of associate and remember where it is found in the book, where in a digital format, it can't do that association. It's not on a page. Therefore, if you wanted to if you wanted to find it again, if you wanted to look it back up, it's easier in a physical copy where you've notated and highlighted because you can reference it more quickly. And I found that study fascinating. So whenever I'm reading something that I intend to retain, I deliberately want the physical copy so that I can notate it accordingly. If it's for entertainment purposes, just fictional story, leisurely reading, news, I'll just happily just do the digital. So I don't know if that was anything you were aware of or have any thoughts on.
Well, it makes sense, and I'll share a story, not specific to accounting firms, but one of our clients is a retailer, so a Main Street retailer, mattress store owner. He's written a shook, and he has explained to me several times, or shared with me several times, where people will come in. He actually sent me a picture one time. People will come in with a physical copy of. So he's an independent mattress store. He's not a chain store. With copies of his book, with the little Post-it notes in it and highlighters, because he puts an offer in the book that they have to bring the book in when they come to him. But they're not just bringing in a brand new book; they're bringing in a book that was read and literally studied. So that validates what you're saying, Roger. The other thing I do wonder, because I've got 2 college-age daughters, is I wonder how that younger generation is, because I know my daughters most of their textbooks are digital now, which is crazy.
Yep.
It's probably slightly different for the younger generation, but for guys like you and me, I love my physical books.
Agreed. So here's another question. Obviously, we're talking about business owners, accounting firm owners. Are there the top 3, top 5? Is there a list of why they should consider as a way of positioning themselves as experts, as a way of maybe using this as a marketing tool? They should have a book, or even better still, a shook?
Yeah, gosh, we could probably spend the rest of the time talking about that. And there's some things I'm writing notes down as we're talking, because you're actually giving me some things to think about here to discuss.
Good.
But and I hope I don't bastardize this, but let me share a quote from. I'm not a huge fan of Jerry Garcia, but I love this quote that Jerry Garcia said. He said, "It's not enough to be the best at what you do. You must be perceived as the only one who does what you do." And I'm like, wow, that is really powerful. I mean, that's a rock guy singing, a singer saying that. And you think about, how does that apply to accountants? How does it apply to any kind of business owner? Well, Roger, I think you would agree, and I think most people listening would agree, it's only getting harder to differentiate yourself these days. It's only getting more challenging to say, hey, I'm a better CPA, I'm a better accountant because of this. Yet it's imperative that we do, all of us, myself included. That's why I came up with the concept of a shook. That's why I came up with the concept of bite-sized books. I had to differentiate myself, and I had to be perceived as the only person doing what I'm doing. So I think it's important, book or no book, that as you're marketing your accounting business, your firm, your practice, that you are doing it in such a way to change the perception of who you are relative to all your competition. This is obviously my opinion. And it's critical. So being a book author, being able to say, I wrote the book on whatever it is, 10 tips for this, how to save your, whatever it might be, I think is an important strategy. It goes with a lot of other things you need to be doing these days, but I think it's one that is, clearly a game changer for the people that do it and then use it, because writing the book is only half the equation, and then using it effectively. So, I just think it's important these days, Roger, to figure out, what can I do to stand out and be different? And being a book author is clearly a differentiator.
Oh, I'd have to agree. And I've heard this for years and years. But I think one of the things that's very helpful is, first of all, identifying, why would I want to write the book? I mean, there's got to be something more than either money, because odds are you're not going to make much money off of the book itself. So that can't be the motivator. And you've got to have at least something to write about. So what is that process to come up with, should I and will I put in that time and energy?
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. Good questions. So first of all, the kind of books that we help our clients publish, this is not about making money with the book. Yeah, you might at some point make $1. It's not, okay? It's about creating for you, the business owner, a sales tool, strategic sales tool in the form of a book. For the consumer, the prospect, your potential client, it's about a piece of information that they want, in a concise, easy to read format. So, being able to have that information available easily in a book format, I'm a huge fan of. So it's not about selling it. Matter of fact, I wrote one of my shooks is called The Magic of Free Books, because it's about how can we give as many of these away as possible. So instead of, giving out business cards, let's say, you're giving out your book. Again, the differentiation point. So it's not about making money on the front end of the book, Roger. It's about getting someone to raise their hand for the book. Hopefully, because it's short and helpful, they'll read it. And then in our formula that we create for our clients, it's about then offering essentially 2 pathways for readers to take, interested readers to take, an active, what we call the active pathway, and then the second one's called the passive one. We could talk about that more if you want. But it basically gives readers an opportunity to continue the conversation, because a good book is a good conversation starter, And really, they're getting to know, like, and trust you as they read it. And if they want more from you, you're giving them one of two pathways to take after they're done with the book. And it's on those pathways, Roger, where you make your money. It's on the back end of the book with your services and the value-added services you offer in your firm.
I like how you're describing this, because one of the things that I've always understood about books, and I'm just going to put this in my context, is you can actually go out to someone, hand them a business card, and the business card would denote, okay, they're in business, they're official, okay, that's and you can have different qualities of business cards, ones that's perforated edges that you've printed off of your own printer, all the way to something that's a little bit more professional and a little bit more effort with graphics. But to take it another level, you can take it to a brochure, and with the brochure, and again, it's not just taking a printer and folding your 8.5 by 11. It's literally having something professionally done. You can, with that, denote something even more than the business card with that pamphlet or brochure. But to go another level and go up to now a book, the book really denotes you're the expert in this space. You have a message. You have something unique about what you're doing that's being told in the book. And then as you were sharing that insight, the book can actually be this journey that the reader gets to go through, that if you write it well, they could then at the end see that you're in fact the solution to a problem that you've identified in the book reading, that at the end they identify with, and they realize you are the solution. It's an element of the sales process that nurtures this potential client, but at the same time positions you as the expert. It's like the story approach to marketing, where you denote them as being the hero, and you're going to be that guide that's going to help them through that experience. If you narrate the book in a proper way, it's doing the sales for you, because at the end they see the value in what it is you have to offer. How am I doing so far?
Yeah, I mean, yes. The answer is yes. I always say it's like you and I are having a conversation right now.
Yes.
A book is, in my opinion, a shook is a 1 hour conversation. That's typically what our 100-page books take on average to read.
Love it.
Right? 1 hour.
Love it.
So it's a 1 hour conversation. It's physical, so they can read it wherever they want, on a plane, wherever it might be, right? And I always say you can pick it up and start reading it in New York and be done by the time you're in Chicago. But it's a conversation. Now, it's not a two-way conversation yet, but it's at least allowing the reader, especially like when I write my shooks, I'm very conversational. I always say one of my mantras is, and it goes against a lot of, quote, book writing purists, I focus on personality, not perfection. I'm not trying to be the perfect grammar person. I'm not trying to be the perfect literary person. I write like I talk, and I want to have a conversation with my readers. And I think that's very, very important. The other thing I'll just comment on, Roger, you were mentioning about, I think you were saying a couple minutes ago about, marketing and differentiating. I guarantee everybody listening to this podcast has a business card. So we know accountants and CPAs, we all have they all have their business cards. How many of them have a business book to hand out when someone asks for it, or they like to hand it out at an engagement or whatever? That's the beauty of this thing. So while, again, if we go back to what Jerry Garcia said, and something I call, for our clients, I call it the special sauce. What's the special sauce in your firm? What's the special sauce that only you can say you do?
Yeah.
And describe that in your book. Again, it's a big game changer.
So hearing that, I'm kind of curious, is there a turnkey process to writing a shook? Is there a template that is kind of a proven process to have a book in a shook like this?
There is. The 100-page book that I'm going to allow your readers to get for free describes it verbatim. I've sold it, because we sell it on Amazon. I've given a bunch of copies away. We've sold thousands and thousands of copies of this book. It's my first bestseller. I have found out post the fact, many people just, they buy it on Amazon and they literally took it, Roger, and created their own shook. I never knew about it. I found out either through a friend or somehow, and I applaud that. A small percentage will always want to work with us because they want my expertise and all that good stuff. But I lay it out very, very clearly. I come from an Italian family, and my Italian grandmother loved to cook, awesome cook. And she had these little note cards, Roger, of her, her recipes. And God darn, I wish I'd gotten those before she passed away. But I use that as a metaphor. I actually show an example in the 100-page book. The formula, the recipe for doing a shook, it's very step by step. I lay out the exact chapters, where you should put them, what the format should be, what should be said in them. And it is my specific recipe, like my grandmother's, marinara sauce. It's my special sauce for this type of book. And I really believe any business owner, accountants in particular, could definitely use this formula to create a short, helpful book.
So if I'm a listener, I'm an accounting professional. I feel that I have a unique service that I do with my clients. I feel that I have a particular thing to offer, a niche that I'm in industry-wise. I'm all of a sudden intrigued by this shook idea. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because I've experienced this, and I know others. They want to write a book, but we're not necessarily the best writers. And I'm intrigued by you saying there's this formula. What's your opinion of ghostwriters?
We do offer that. We weren't offering it for the first couple of years. Well, I shouldn't say that. We didn't offer it blatantly. So a couple things. Our process, our bite-sized books process is very, very. I've made it as simple as possible, Roger. We've had, you name the kind of business owner, we've dealt with them, and they've gotten their shooks done. Now, I literally am holding their hands and coaching them through the book, through the shook. However, mainly our CEO level clients, the guys and gals that are running bigger companies, they typically don't have the time necessarily to do it. By the way, I always encourage people to write their own. I think it still comes across better than any ghostwriter can do.
Well, everyone has their own voice, right?
Yeah, their own voice, and then the way they say things. But listen, you and I both know many very famous business books were ghost written. They weren't written by the name of the person that's on the cover. So it's a reality. I'm not against ghostwriting. We have a good ghostwriter that we work with, but I try to encourage. I mean, to put it into maybe a better picture, Roger, the typical business book is anywhere from 75 to about 100,000 words. So that's like 200 to 300 pages of a regular sized book. Shooks are a little smaller too, by the way, the way they're physically sized. They're slightly smaller. A shook is about 12 to 15,000 words. So right away you could see it's dramatically different. Yet it's, if we were on video, I'd show you, it's a real book. It looks like it has text on the spine. It sits on the bookshelf.
Oh yeah.
It's a real book. But the fact that you're only having to write, 15,000 words, that is not insurmountable for most people, especially when they know what they have to write and what it should be said. So most people can do this. It's not the challenge. We're not writing War and Peace, and we're not writing a New York Times bestseller here. We're writing a book that we know our prospects need and will want once it's out there.
I'm glad you said War and Peace. That literally was what was on my mind before we started this recording. And then I was also thinking of Tolkien with Lord of the Rings. Oh my God, yeah. I was just thinking, that's not what we're talking about here. What I had on my mind, though, what I think of when I hear or think of your shook idea is I'm thinking of Who Moved My Cheese or Og Mandino's Greatest Salesman in the World. Yep. These are books. They have spines, as you were mentioning, but they're not as large. There's another book, one that we've written called In the Black, and they are kind of along this premise of something you can read from New York to Chicago at the end, have an actionable thing that you can do. It's implementable. There's something at the end that I can now do next. And the thing I like about this is it does literally allow you to be perceived as the expert. You have a voice to share this uniqueness about what you're doing. So this is all very intriguing and special to me. Here's a question. What do you think as a business owner is that tipping point when all of a sudden you feel like you have a story to tell? When's that moment where you all of a sudden realize what I have to say matters?
Well, again, for the kind of books that we publish, Roger, these aren't memoirs. These aren't even necessarily what I call passion project books. Maybe you went through, for example, I have a podcast, And I just had a guest on who had a heart attack at a very young age. And that heart attack prompted him to write a book on just enjoying every day, right? I call that a passion project. So those are the kind of books, in my opinion, where yes, you might need some motivation. You might need to feel a certain way. Like I need to share this. The books that we're talking about, if you're in business, accounting professional, whatever, business owner, entrepreneur, CEO, whatever, you're helping people in some capacity. So the kind of books that we're encouraging our clients to write are books about, something focused on how you serve your clients, something that they're looking for. So it's not really about the motivation or sort of the life, a big life thing that has happened to you. It's about really just sharing how you help people in a different format, a short, helpful book. And before I forget, because as I'm getting older, I tend to forget these things. I'm like, I should have said that. You mentioned it earlier, and I'd like to talk about this a little bit more if we could. But
please,
there's in the 100-page book, I talk about the special sauce, and the special sauce. I mean, it kind of pays homage. I think it was probably to Burger or McDonald's and the big, the whatever was the Big Mac, and that song from the '70s. Again, I'm dating myself, but
hold on a second. Hold on. The song from are we saying like 2 all beef patty special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun?
Yes, you got it. You remember that?
Go. All right. I do remember that.
I actually looked that up. I used that in an article I wrote. I actually found that the original TV commercial on YouTube. It brought back memories. But the special sauce is what made the Big Mac different than the Whopper, right? It was one of the things that differentiated the from the Big Mac from the Whopper, for example. And again, the Whopper is Burger King. But I use that as a strategy to say, what is it you're doing in your business? Let me take this back. How can you describe what you're doing in your business in a way that sounds different, that will be perceived differently than what your competition's saying? Yeah. So, for example, and I'm not an accounting professional, but I think I can probably figure a quick headline out. How to save on taxes, or I'll help you save on taxes. I mean, it's probably like a really overused accounting term. But can you say I have a 5-step system that will save you, that'll save you 100, whatever it is. So it's like, it's describing it in a way that makes what you do sound differently based on your own experience, what you bring to the table. Again, a shook, while most people love it, I've had some people say, well, that's really stupid. Why would you come up with a stupid word like that? But the point was, I wanted it to be different. It's my special sauce. So how can your accounting professionals describe either what they do or even a part of what they do differently? That is a great focus, Roger, for a shook.
So I've always thought of it as, 5 reasons to, or top 10 things to avoid, or the 5 questions to ask. It's basically this how-to guide where the expert more or less kind of reveals, the behind the scenes. You don't want to not know this type of a thing. And the reader then is intrigued. This is an accountant and a CFO, an advisor that's telling me if I'm going to be working with a CFO advisor, what should I be asking? What should I look for? What should I expect? And this is the guide to an excellent experience. Well, now I'm kind of getting the expert's insights as to what I should be expecting. So I like how you're describing this shook as being kind of a hand guide, if I will.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I pulled 2 off of our shelf, the first 2 that came to mind. So these are 2 accounting professional shooks I'm looking at right now.
All right.
And interestingly enough, but for some reason, these are 2 different guys in the United States, 2 different parts, and they're the only 2 of our authors that ever use sort of like cartoon caricatures on the covers. The one is called Taxes Suck, which is, I think, a great title. 7 tax strategies for small businesses guaranteed to save you at least $5,000, to your point of the 7 blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then another one was Who's Stealing Your Retirement? 7 cunning thieves who are trying to ransack your nest egg and how you can catch them. He wanted to have some fun with that. So, yeah. I mean, those are 2 accounting professionals that, don't take themselves too seriously. They're having fun with it. They've written a short book that describes their special sauce process for helping people in a specific way. And yeah, they're doing well with them.
I love this. This is a great conversation. So I do know, just simply because of conversations I've had, that people are intrigued with the idea of having a book. Many people, after years of doing what they do for a living, they feel as if they have a story to tell. And I don't know about everyone, but I've oftentimes heard you need to write a book. And I like how this is giving us kind of a pathway to do that. And it's not daunting. The whole shook idea is definitely palatable. So here's a question. We've already addressed whether or not we should have financial gain related to the book sales themselves, and understand that it's really in the aftermath, the after effects of the book that we really make the money. But is there a powerful way that we could actually leverage this in our business other than what we've already discussed?
Yeah, great question. And it's one of those things I forgot to talk about earlier. So again, I think I described this in the 100-page book. I call it a book-centric or a shook-centric marketing strategy. And if you think about it, Roger, even on television these days, cable TV probably predominantly, obviously on social media, Facebook predominantly, you will see, at least I know I see, a lot of book offer TV commercials, book offer ads on Facebook, where the expert is offering their book, free, they charge a shipping, that kind of thing. So the beauty of this for the astute business owner who's written a book is now you can build a much more sophisticated marketing model for your business. And what I mean by that, Roger, is rather than do what every other accounting professional is doing out there, the way they market, you can now offer your book as the front end thing versus what every other traditional firm is doing. It allows you to, so for example, if firm A is has their beautiful headshot or whatever a typical firm ad might look like, typically it's probably like a headshot or something like that. You can feature your book, and we advise our clients to do like a big picture of your book, like a 3D model of your book in the ad, and say, listen, I've written the definitive guide on XYZ, get your free copy here. So yes, there are a number of ways. That's one way. So sort of like a book funnel. Another way that's really, really effective, Roger, and I don't know if this, maybe you can clarify, if a lot of your accounting professionals listening, are they a lot of them or most of them, some of them Main Street type business owners?
So the easiest way to define it is many of our listeners are from solo entrepreneur, where it's just them offering accounting services, to partners with an office, a staff of accounting professionals that are working with a large client base. And so it really does range. But whether they be partners in a firm with staff or they be that sole entrepreneur that's offering, whether it be bookkeeping, tax, accounting, CFO, advisory services, I think they each, after some period of time, do pride themselves on the unique relationship they have with their clients, and I would presume a unique process that they have to take care of their clients. So that's how I'm imagining the listeners at this point.
So they're not. I was thinking, are they academic or so? But so they're the people that I serve every day. So one really unique, I believe it's unique. It's very powerful. I've got story after story I could share with this, Roger, is once the book is done, and again, in my opinion, and maybe folks might not like to hear this, writing the book and publishing the book is really the easy part. It really is. The more challenging part is what I call the persistent, consistent use of it once it's done.
Yes.
History has shown over and over again, people get these books and then the energy is real high and then they realize, wait, I got to go do something with it, right? It doesn't do any good if it's sitting in a box in your closet. You got to be out there promoting it. Most local business owners, people that have reach into their community, a very smart strategy is to find other business owners who have your potential prospects coming into their place of business and asking them to display your book in their place of business and give it away to people that might want to copy. So you're now getting in front of other people's clients, other people's customers, and allowing these other business owners, these what I call them strategic partners, to give out copies of your book. They're giving them out because they know it's going to help their clients, their customers, and it's helping you because now your information is getting in front of them. again, a number of my clients have leveraged this strategy very, very effectively. For example, an accountant could, give his book to his friend who's a financial advisor. Could give his friend who's a lawyer, an estate attorney, and just say, listen, put it on your display rack in your office. If you hear someone who might get benefit from it, just give them a copy, right? This is not about, the $2 or $3 or $4 it's going to cost you to get that book out there and give that away is minuscule to what they could potentially make on the back end. So that in-person strategic partner strategy is very effective, can be very effective.
Yeah, I liked how you said that there's something after the book. I believe a lot of people see it as daunting to write the book, but once you've written the book, you're now a published author, and so that's never going to go away. I mean, 10 years from now, you can say you've written a book, but the challenge becomes now, how do you repurpose the book that you've written? Whether you've got 50 copies or 500 copies, they don't do any good in the closet, like you mentioned. And so what's that strategy you're going to use to get them out into the public, particularly to your ideal client? And I appreciate you mentioning that, because that's where the challenge becomes. It's the various strategies you can implement to make sure it gets out into circulation, that people actually read it, benefit from it, and then hopefully want to share it. So very well said. Here's another question. I'm a business owner. I see a story in my mind of why I want to write a book and what I would write about. What do you think usually holds people back from now actually doing something?
Yeah, another great question. There's probably a number of answers, but I've learned a lot of them because I asked that question on my podcast when I'm interviewing book authors. So there's fear. I'd say fear is the number one thing. Fear, I'm not a good enough writer. I'm not smart enough. Who am I to write a book? I'm not smart enough. I don't have a PhD, whatever. All that head trash that so many people have. In my mind, it's all BS. Again, we're not, what we're doing here for our clients, we're not trying to write the next New York Times bestseller. We're just trying to help people in our community. I always say become 5 Mile famous for what they do, or some of our corporate leaders become worldwide famous. But it's not about this monumental book that's going to change civilization. It can change individual lives for sure. So I'd say fear. I'd say not. The other thing is not having a blueprint, not having a roadmap. How do I write it? Where do I write? What do I write? How do I get it printed? How do I get it edited? All this stuff. How do I get it designed so that, that's out there? Obviously, in this day and age with Amazon, there's a ton of books on how to do all that. So the technology barrier is not anywhere what it used to be. So I'd say fear, not knowing what to do. And then, a lot of times it's just accountability and motivation. So that's part of the service we provide. We hold our clients accountable. We're on frequent calls with them, and we're keeping them, moving them along. So I would say those are probably the 3 big reasons.
Interesting. I'm going to add to it because I've worked with a number of writers, and I've experienced this myself. I think one of the first things, like you were mentioning, is fear. It's just, fear of the unknown. I don't know how. But one of the things that I've noticed is the commitment. Am I willing to commit to the weeks and months that it's going to take to actually accomplish this? Because it's not just I'm going to decide in this weekend, pull it off, although you could write it over a weekend, I guess. But it's more of a long commitment of drafting the outline, coming up with the chapters, a chapter a week kind of a thing. And so you're having to commit to a longer process. But I also think that one of the challenges is financial. Some people just think there's got to be a huge dollar amount associated with this. And I think that could be daunting. Is this really going to be as expensive as my mind is thinking it may be? But that last element of, okay, so I write the book, then what? And it's the unknown of really, how am I going to leverage this? So I think you've started to address a lot of these things to make it especially palatable with the shook idea. I mean, the shook is definitely different than a book, as we've already defined. And I think you're helping people realize, especially with your own book, that there's this special sauce. There is a turnkey way to draft a book. And then getting the permission from you, as you mentioned, that we don't have to be perfect. We can have our own voice in this. I think these are all very good things for people to hear. Here's the next question. What's the question that that a potential author doesn't know to ask and doesn't ask that they should be asking? What are we missing?
Well, I probably have already covered it, which is, how do I really make money with this thing? And then again, it's not about selling books. And it literally comes down to marketing. Like, I always encourage my clients, just think of it as I want to make, initially you might think, what, a book a day? I always say, just focus on a book a day. Get a book a day out of your office. You do whatever you have to do, whether it's online lead generation, direct mail, a podcast, YouTube video, you're speaking at an event, at a chamber of commerce, whatever it is. If over the course, if 365 books went out, which is not an insurmountable number of books, Roger, in a year, that's 365 soldiers out there fighting for you and your firm. Something good is going to happen. And I think multiple something goods are going to happen. It's just impossible for it not to happen. So, I always try to, my college degree, interestingly enough, is I'm an engineering degree from Penn State. I have an engineering degree from Penn State. So I think very methodically, very logically, very sequentially. And I'm very well known in the marketing world for making complex things simple. And I try to do that for our clients. We make the book writing process simple. On average, it takes about 8 to 12 weeks from idea to finished book. And then we try to make it simple for them to figure out how to use it in their business. And, again, we're not out there building these huge funnels. We're not out there tens of thousands of dollars. It could happen, but our clients are typically, like you said, small, medium, Main Street type business owners. They don't have these $100,000 a month budgets for online media. So it's figuring out what can they do with this asset they've created and use it effectively each and every day.
That was actually very helpful. As you were sharing that, I realized I've got 2 examples to share here. These are personal ones. One is, just to illustrate our point, I can go into places that I frequent and I can go in with shorts and T-shirts on, or I can go in, as I oftentimes do coming from work, where I'm wearing dress pants and a dress shirt. And how they treat me in the same setting, same venue, is differently. I'll be addressed as sir when I'm wearing my dress clothes from work, and nobody's referring to me typically as sir when I'm wearing a T-shirt and shorts. And it's not that I'm being disrespected. It's just there's a difference. It's kind of like wearing a uniform at school. Kids that wear school uniforms act differently, hence they wear uniforms to school. But I put this in the context of the book now to say, when I have a book, it's amazing how the doors open where I've been invited to be on podcasts. I've been given opportunities to speak on stage. I've been invited to speak to certain people because they see me as an expert because I have a book. And they've not read the book. I mean, they couldn't even tell. I bet they couldn't even quote what the title of the book was. They just know I have written a book. And it's fascinating to see that all of a sudden the doors open. Now, here's what's even kind of interesting. We have 2 books in our business that we utilize. Both of the books were written when the previous president of the company was at the helm, and I was involved in the book writing. I wasn't necessarily a ghostwriter, but I was a contributor in both publications. But when we published the book, my name wasn't put necessarily on the book only because of the fact I wasn't the president of the company at the time. Well, he's since retired. He's listed as the author of the book. It was written by a ghost author. I'm in the notes and acknowledgments as a contributor, but I'm able to leverage the book in behalf of the company. And people don't even necessarily look at the author of the book as I hand it out because I'm very confident and familiar with the content. I was very involved with it, but I'm technically not listed as the author. I was more or less one of the ghost authors that contributed. But look how I'm still leveraging it and still getting the opportunities presented to me because of it. So very, very fascinating. I think it's very, very effective as a marketing strategy. It's complementary to it. So very, very good. Would you mind if I switch gears on us?
No, I don't think so.
Good. Well, I was just very intrigued. Obviously, you've just started a business. You went after this whole thing. I was just curious, as a business owner, What has this journey been like for you where you went out and started this business? What lessons have you learned as you've run your own company?
Oh gosh. So I started my business, my consulting company in 1998. And, the first book we published for a client was 2008. And I had done a number since then. It wasn't until 2019 where I actually said, you know what, I'm going in. I just dove in both feet. And all we do nowadays, 95% of what we do is just publishing, short, helpful books for clients.
Okay.
So, I've been doing it a while. Gosh, Roger, there's so many lessons learned. Again, I've got 2 college-age daughters. As a matter of fact, my younger daughter just started an internship today. We're outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and she's working for the Philadelphia Phillies down at the stadium. As a matter of fact, there's a game going on right now. So she's a hospitality major management student, and she's working for some internship down there today. So I'm always trying to teach her and her older sister different lessons. Her older sister, by the way, wrote a book in her senior year of high school. This is actually a cool little lesson. She was going in her senior year of high school, and I wanted her to do something that we were July 4th of her going into her senior year. I said, listen, what are you going to do this summer? And I said, why don't I gave her this idea for what we call a compilation book, which is you write one chapter and you get a bunch of other people to write a chapter. She was working in a veterinarian's office, as a part-time helper, and we had just rescued our first dog, and before that we'd gotten dogs from breeders, and we came up with this idea, Roger, and she took it and ran with it. So that was July 4th. By Labor Day, which was 3 months later, she had printed copies of a book called Dog Joy, which had 26 stories. So herself and 25 other authors contributed a chapter about what it means to rescue a dog.
Wow.
Now, we did that for a summer project. We also did it because I know how to leverage that type of book to make for fundraising. So she was able to raise about $6,000 from the sales. So in that case, we were selling the book. She donated all that money, almost about $6,000, to all the different rescues in the book. But here's what we didn't get, Roger, which was really cool. And this again goes to the power of being an author. She was then in her senior year of high school. She's applying to colleges. And I didn't even tell her to do this, but she used her book as her, what do they call it? I keep thinking chapter, but they have to write a paper about themselves, an essay on themselves, why they should be a student at such and such college. And I didn't know this, but she used her book as an example of that. Now, meanwhile, she also got a ton of local press. We did do local press media. So she was featured on the front page of 3 different newspapers in our area. She was featured in a Philadelphia area magazine as one of these kids, people to watch under 30 type of articles. Yep. Anyway, lots of publicity. She probably could have gotten more if she took it even more seriously, but she used it to get into every college that she applied to. More importantly, she got scholarship offers, which we didn't even apply for, from all these schools. She got handwritten letters from the deans. She was applying to the schools of journalism. She was getting handwritten letters from the deans saying, "It's awesome you wrote a book. We'd love to have you here." Interestingly enough, the one college she chose to go to was the only school that didn't offer her a scholarship. But I share that story because it makes me proud as a dad. But it just shows the power of what it means to be a book author. I just would encourage anyone listening to say, hey, this is something I can do, I should do, and I will do.
Yeah, no, I like that. That was wonderful. So sharing that you have these 2 daughters, I have to ask, as an entrepreneur, what are you hoping or what do you think they're learning watching you as their father run a company and do what you're doing? What do you think they're getting out of this?
I love these questions. I would hope, dedication to really trying to serve. I really believe in that for our clients. I really, if I'm in bed at night and I think of something, I'll get out of bed and, see if I can fix something or whatever. So I think, there's that kind of, I think they see a dedication. They see an excitement to always wanting to be, I'm still an avid student. Even though I didn't read any nonfiction on my recent vacation, I'm always trying to better my craft so I can be a better service to my clients. And I would also think, this is probably the most important thing, there are other ways to serve the community, to serve the world, other than the traditional college route necessarily, to have a quote job. I don't know if either of them are going to be in the entrepreneurial route. But regardless, I hope they would see that there's other ways to be of service than the traditional I have a job type of thing.
Gotcha. So share with me a proud moment in business that you look back and you even impressed or amazed yourself as to how you dealt with, overcame, maybe accomplished what it was that you experienced.
Yeah. One thing that comes to mind, because I just shared it as a story in a different context. Are you familiar with a gentleman named Dan Kennedy?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a student of Dan. I know Dan personally. I've done work with Dan. I'm in one of his books. I've been to his house. I've had dinner with him a couple times. So I've gotten to know him. For a number of years, from 2006 to 2011, at the time, Dan and his business partner, Bill Glazer, were running these local chapters around the country. At the time, there was about 100 of them. I ran the one outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And what that meant was once a month, we would get people to come to a hotel. I did it at a local college and learn about marketing, direct response marketing, stuff like that. And I didn't even know what I didn't know at the time, Roger. But I built that into out of 100 of them, the most successful chapter for a number of years. It was the number one Kennedy chapter in the entire world. At the time, they were only in the country. And it got so big, I was able to sell it in the future. I sold it to a member in 2011. But it got so big, Roger, and so successful that Dan literally flew by private jet to a local airport. I picked him up in a limousine, brought him to this hotel. I had 323 people in the room for that night. It was a special night with Dan. I didn't know how big of a deal that was until later. And it occurred to me as it was sort of happening, I just sort of took it for granted. I just worked hard. I did a lot of marketing, get all these people in the room. I grew this group. But I look back now and said, darn, that was pretty good what you did there. I don't think I appreciated it at the time, but I had a huge impact on thousands, literally I don't know, probably 1,500 over those 5 years of local business owners in this Philadelphia area that came through our doors, and hopefully we're able to improve their businesses because of that.
I love that. One, thank you for sharing, but two, sometimes it is amazing those things that we accomplish, and it's perhaps not until hindsight that we realize, maybe I really did impact a number of people and made the world a better place, if nothing else. So that is incredible. I love it.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah, please.
And that's the beauty of a book, Roger. Also, I will share this. And if you anyone listen to my podcast, you'll hear story after story of this being truthful. And it's truthful for me too. When your book is out there, 99.9% of the times, you will never know as the author how it's impacted somebody. But once in a while, you'll read an amazing Amazon review if you have it on Amazon, or someone will tell you, they'll write you a letter. And that's the beauty of being a book author, is that it's out there. It does have impact. It will change lives. It will help people. Even if it's a book about saving on taxes or whatever it might be, it can have such a dramatic impact, and you'll never know it, but it needs to be out there. Last thing I'll quick share, I interviewed a gentleman recently on my podcast. He wrote a book about change, how to change yourself, et cetera. And I'm kind of high-level overview.
Okay.
He didn't know this. He didn't know this when he wrote the book, but the book became a book that was used by prisons to help inmates as they were preparing to re-enter society as part of a curriculum. He didn't write the book for that purpose.
Yeah.
But now this particular book is used throughout the country in the prison system to help inmates who are going to come back into society. And that's the power of a book.
That is incredible. The recidivism rate of the prison population is a challenge. And to learn that you've written a book that is helping with that adaptation back into normalcy or life, it brings to mind Shawshank Redemption and the older gentleman that returns to society, and it's changed so much, he just can't cope with it. So I like knowing that book you mentioned is being utilized. That's really good. This has been a great conversation. I've quite enjoyed this. What I'd like to do, Mike, is I'm going to summarize a few of the highlights that I have from this, and then I'm going to come back to you for a closing thought, okay?
Sure.
First of all, there are some things that I'd like to invite the listeners, you to go to the episode description and there find some of the things that we've been speaking of today. The first thing that I want to make note of is Mike is making available a free or some free resources, particularly if you go there, you can get a free copy of his book, the 100-page book, and another one for free. It's the Shook Quick Start Guide. So go to the episode description and you're going to find there the link that you're going to be needing to access these two short books or Shook books that you can leverage in your own business. Now, as you're going there, I would also like to point out that Universal Accounting Center is also providing a free copy of two books that all accounting professionals should have a copy of in their business library. It's essentially what you can utilize to help your businesses, your clients become profitable. It's basically a must-have addition to your library, one called In the Black, 9 Principles to Make Your Business Profitable, as well as a book called Red to Black in 30 Days, a Small Business Accountant's Guide to Quick Turnarounds. So here are 4 books that you're definitely going to want to take advantage of, 2 specific to the accounting profession, and obviously those relative to today's discussion about Shooks and how you can leverage them in your marketing to get paid what you're worth. So as a summary of today's conversation, I really like the fact that we've taken this whole idea of you ought to write a book and made it a little bit more palatable. We've gotten basically this whole idea of Shook where we can take and follow a turnkey process, draft a book, and use it to leverage it in our marketing to acquire the clients that we're looking for, literally using it to position ourselves as the experts. Mike was great at pointing out some of the do's and don'ts, some of the things to not worry about, such as getting rich off of the actual publishing of the book. But he also shared with us some things that I think are worth noting or mentioning so that we can actually write a book that's relevant to our potential clients so that they can see us as experts. And at the end of the day, have an interest in the services that we're providing. I really think like we ended that oftentimes these books, they're a legacy. They will actually live on in perpetuity beyond ourselves. They will actually make a difference in people's lives. And if we put forth the effort to one way or another get them out into the community, they will last longer than I think we can imagine and impact people's lives differently and more so than we could expect. So I encourage you to take a moment and maybe reflect on what it is that you can share as a message. You've lived a great life. You've had your personal experiences. You've lived and learned. So what are the lessons that you can share personally and professionally that people could appreciate and then obviously maybe be drawn to you for the services that you provide and then admittedly pay you for your services. So with that being said, Mike, what would you like to add to today's discussion?
First, Roger, thank you. It was I really enjoyed this. A lot of great questions. And I would just encourage everybody to really think about, is this something that, is a Shook something that your potential clients are looking for? Is your wisdom, your insights, the way you help them, is that something they need? Chances are the answer is yes. And I would just encourage everyone to, read the 100-page book. You can figure out exactly how to write a Shook and go do it.
Perfect. Well, with that being said, I want to invite you as the listener to take the time now to go to the episode description and get that information, but also on the platform you prefer, subscribe to the podcast. Make the most of this. Get updates as to the weekly releases that we do with the experts to help you actually have the premier accounting firm in your area. Now, as for this and other principles that we actually teach, feel free to check out universalaccounting.com for more information on how you can apply these in your business, as well as feel free to give us a phone call. You can reach us at 801-265-3777. And always remember this, if it's about accounting, it is universal. Do take care of a great day and be safe out there.